This interview is brought to you by Verizon. When the Navy and Marine Corps look to securely, effectively modernize their network and voice communications in the continental United States or outside the contiguous United States, Verizon's suite of services, solutions, and contract vehicles are there to help meet mission needs.
Hello everyone, I'm Roshan Fortune, coming to you from sunny San Diego at AFCEA West 2025. Joining me now is Ben Motten. You are CIO of NAVWAR, correct?
Yes, I am.
To that end, let's talk about NAVWAR and the challenges in adopting modern tech. What do those look like?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me. I would start with what we want to try to accomplish, which is really empowering our workforce and getting them to the tools and the capabilities they need to execute their mission. So when we look at that, if we were to look at software on a phone and you were to order a jacket online, right? There's all sorts of information that's operating in the background, right? The location, the pricing, the geotagging. None of that's apparent to you, right? And if you had to think about the data fabric in the background, you probably wouldn't do it, right?
Sure.
So what we really want to do in our mission is to enable that for the workforce, get them the tools they need so they can focus on the mission, right? So the warfighter can focus on the mission and what they're trying to do and not the technology that they're working on. And there are some hurdles to that. And one of the hurdles would be our legacy infrastructure, our legacy software and hardware that we have. And that's really, in some ways, holding us back and a challenge. But with any good challenge, we have some opportunities. And one of those opportunities would be the ability to modernize. And because some of our infrastructure is sold, we've got software that might be 10 years old, maybe 20. We have the ability to leapfrog, right? So where that technology or that software was previously doing services, we now can use low code, no code, and automation to do the same thing with a much cheaper cost, right? Taking advantage of the commoditization of IT and the advances that we've had. So that's one way that we can deal with some of our legacy. We also have legacy hardware infrastructure, so we want to be able to leapfrog that as well. Like last mile has always been a problem. We have a lot of last mile legacy cables and capabilities. So now we can go and say, do we want to go to 5G? Do we want to leapfrog to go to PLEO and take advantage of capabilities there to, again, enable our workforce? At the end of the day, we want to put the right tools in their hands to allow them to do what they need to do.
So those leapfrogging decisions, how do you sort of make those and how do you consider the all that comes into it? Sure.
So that gets into, how are we prioritizing our work? What will we do to look at that? Fortunately, I think we have guidances from the CNO, Project 33, ISV 2.0,
sure,
right? Our Navy plan, all operating under the umbrella of the Davison window. So we've now got a pressurized situation that is helping us, filter down those priorities,
sure,
right? Because it's about what capabilities can you get out to the warfighter now, right? Anticipating that when you put something out, there's training, there's getting it out there, right? So if we're to meet the Davison window and be able to do what we need to do, we've got to reprioritize what we might have been doing in the past that might have taken 3 years or 4 years or 5 years and come down. So now we get to how we want to make our decisions, and we want to make those by being data informed and data driven. Now, it's easy to make those statements. The harder part is putting them into action, right? Because when we say data, we say, okay, well, is it the right data? Where is the data? If the preponderance of the data is an Excel spreadsheet, what are we going to do? How are we connecting that data, right? What is the data governance that we have operating, right? And I think, that's the hard lift that we're in the process of continuing to do, right? We've got a lot of great initiatives going on. We have an amazing workforce in NAVWAR that do amazing things. And so what we really want to do is continue to analyze that, make proper decisions, and move forward. One of the questions our leadership always asks, and I think it's perfect for the question you just asked, is, are we winning? Right? And it's a brilliant question because it's going to force you to be a little introspective. It also, the follow-up is, how do you know we're winning? And we get right to, Well, what are your metrics?
Right.
What are your data? What are your trend lines? What's your analysis? And sometimes the hard truth is you might be looking at some things or have some things, you might not have that information. So now you have to go and say, okay, what is the end state? How do I know I've achieved that end state? How am I going to measure my progress going to that end state? And so that is another thing that we're seeing across the board, right? We have people doing it, but now we're trying to make sure that's a universal approach, a universal cultural approach to getting after it and prioritizing our issues. And then it becomes kind of relevant. Now you've got your targets, you've got your means by which you're measuring your targets, you go execute.
I'm going to dig on modernization a little bit and where you are in that journey, particularly modernizing IT at NAVWAR.
It's exciting times because, as we know, technology is moving at a blinding speed. So I think, again, some of the challenges that are there are, reconciling your current processes with the speed of technology. So, are we taking an agile mindset? Are we looking at things iteratively? And again, that's a cultural change. That's constantly going and questioning, right? Doing a value stream analysis of, let's look at the process. Do we need that process? Do we need that policy? Right? It may have served a purpose at one point, might not serve a purpose now. So I think what we're seeing is you've got these forces that we've had built up over time, right? Our policies, our procedures, the way that we've done things, and a certain cycle that goes to POM cycles, right? Mm-hmm. And now we have software that's changing one day to the next. And the capabilities that weren't there last week are now there this week, right? So reconciling those two is basically constantly forcing us to look at, okay, what are we trying to achieve, right? What are some of the barriers that are in the way that we can remove, right? Whether they be procedural, whether they be, again, a policy that is no longer applicable, so that we can move forward. And I think that's really the hard work that we're doing right now. Some of the benefits of that, some of the things that we've seen, flank speed is a great example, sure. Right? There were a lot of policies and other things in place, right? Even when we talk about our connection using commercial internet to access, right? That was a battle. But at the end, we were able to prove that it was secure, that it was a good way to go, and it gets us better. Now we can use that for ubiquitous access for our workforce, modernization, again, getting the tools for our people to work anywhere, anytime, which is a really good thing. So,
well, to that end, you talk centering the warfighters is something I know I hear a lot about from the sea services. So, look, how do you keep them up to date on these things when stuff changes so quickly?
So, whenever you've got new technology, training is the next thing. And I know that there's we've just had a great initiative with waypoints. We've moved over to that to start to get more media out to people so they can go and train up on the things that they need to understand. But it's carving time out for your workforce as well to make sure that they've got time and keeping in the mind, right? You just can't, I think engineers are great at creating things. They're not necessarily great at creating things that people know how to make work. So, one, always keeping your customer in mind as you create your products is really important. And two, making sure that you factor into that cycle the amount of time it's going to train, the amount of time it's going to take to train a workforce on that product is really important. And that's one of the reasons why, as we look at the Davidson window, right, we might be talking 2027, but you can't, right? You've got to be talking 2026. You've got to be talking late 2025 because you've got that lead time to integrate, to get people schooled up on the product, right? To understand how it integrates and works, right? You get that feedback as well. And that's all under a time crunch. So
yeah, agile at its finest in a lot of ways. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Great.